Let me remind every one of ourselves here to take a moment and cultivate the altruistic motivation or the bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should participate in this Lamrim discourse, discourse on the stage of the path leading to enlightenment by Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa. Allow me to read about a couple of pages from this Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stage of the path enlightenment, volume number 3 in the English translation, page 311, to give you the blessing of oral transmission, lineage oral transmission followed by explication.
Zimba Jongje Yinje, the Mivi Jumatabi, Don Yovan Zimba Lion, Young Junjinje, Mushin, Dorogus, and Zimana Minete. Yimini the Maina, the engineer, the about Jeremy Jones, Jewish. Gormonti and Deon, Jumatabi, Don Yava, the Maria Bani, Mashepa, Yimbara, Don Mesa, Yuji, the BSA one, but Tambon Jong, the Jong, Laya, they don't draw a tone. Mebering Yaba, maybe, Conla, Dindi, Major, Bashisa, she. Chasami ever song and no pin to song and no chow young ranch made out you meet some much very bit of Jacob Roy. Tender tomboy attended she will tomboy in la dinner do be a trumpet no pin to shower young Jimmo the man. Tenerife Navajivana Kazara Soba, Rangi Moto, Yedin, Yuchu Jungse, Jamindu, Go, Nambo, Telatine, no one they know. Pembindo, Bibidu, Sawa, Kawa, Menji, the Omio, Dala, Mamuji, Dala, Merging, and I may be the 学天天对吧？当街老模样，隔3年人我这边就这么去把，让心就让心嘛着把去吧当，让心别刚才老说，我今年来说吧，来说吧，对吧？这边用吧了，要吧了，你吧天天中的天能说就别。人做的是人做的，现在真的送哎。我们到我现在一个人那点着我些嘛，人那单位也把叫上的就了，我把兄弟着了，就了你们是我现在现在的这单位也把总局单位也把兄弟着我弄没少玩。你看了多从也不先不见，他们这些人也不是养那上去，我这不是这边多多当的，我不要吧，大约他这到了养那我不能同些吧，他们这就都是滚的当，现在当我们大约他这东西，我这都定个这就。这定没多久，那把也叫的呢，定金说的钱，希望着我们都的，别了没就是样，希望没心情没当所长没的学能呢，我都我去行着，你们都那个老大不学到完这些没就是明个这点的样，现在这点钱就。破云着没讲，连线那也那样，却没说国话那样。干那连这面，大不了嘛也是我们觉得，连上面见那话他讲没太阳线呢，现在是不们就是面现些是我是说就往面。介绍的这也不切不别好啥人别你叫去那就没得不了，干那个。这不能成为那些年这不这把的娘们叫我们老先去西边那些这不可啥些些，给出去玩们娘人，娘人嘛就把这外面把送把大布，你把瞧我是，到群众的地里开始开始，那么像那个豆的，觉得什么都是，但觉得什么都的。给这些个，但地空的，现在的龙是没多地方去多啊，到这里，现在不来是，这些得到游泳所见吧，那是我不能就让些这个民族为，所以呢，我不能这么对不对？你天爷上面六万九了，现有没有到上面六个不是送不小了？这样有没有？这样有个地方我这个让先去吧呢？रिक्वा दिन दिशी शिशि मान्यम बतिसी रिक्वे थे में दे चेने न्यूगुला राशिं की यवन ज़ेंबा मिजेयं न्यूगुला राशिं में बतिर देन्यां बता राशिं की तोंबे नाम जुमता वो देन्यां ने रिक्वे गा गोवे से थी ज़िबा चोंजे यिंजे तेदा में बे से जुमता वो 통 여버는 제발라용 윤진기 무셔여베 도고스냥 제발니 이면데 됐다나 뭐이나 땡데게 내바담지 샤미 쫑셔문주 시nger 모두 셰신도서 다텔라 데데 히자바데
게 권다게 십자바 손베게
라 히자베 데와데
십자바
히자베 데와 다에 데와라 거디
게 가면슈나게 간데 니마소게
라
파즈 딱로견데 게 딱로견 봐.
라
겐파 가장 딱로견 말봐 겐.
딱로 페이지 자위 사마리
가장 나 샤사데 겐 데두단다.
가발레도
띵제 개베 도고 롱탕 봐 겐.
라
띵제 개베 도고 롱 겐디르와다 그래서 리바디 최신의 작업을 세저와게 이는 마치 마페네 아니 디디도게 반덴다라기 게 우마주 저와저와게 디와데 공부루도 기 사와셔럽 저와게 디 드롭네게 디와데 디도게 띵이제 게베 더 슝주도와게 도와실래로와 Game caro ma pet ma pensa ke. Shukja chen se ke.
마 레시에서
Game pet ma caro stese shung mang bus ke. Nganje inji chen shu shu ma se ke.
모쇼직래 이제다.
Ke ya pen again de to ke ting jen ke be do
시제는 레바세야 되베.
mindu ke shibje da ta pero mindu ke.
디또 이제도 이모도
Ken di do ke dan da sa je ni ba ke kasa 최을이야게 다 여러 여마 사제셔 봐게 니 땅마데 샤 이렇게 다 사진 이바 걸래 맞다 나는 된마
디로요다.
걔 단다디 걔 가서 다게 대신기다 강가 마 차를 마스도 패디서 그러게
디게데
단다 이렇게 숨겨주시네
디게도 차려 다디 걸래
얘를 숨겨다게
라
숨겨다 송여마다 다게 대신기다 지서 내가 그게 가지나 숨겨게 걔마 걸어 패에서 차 슈게 처음
그래서 그런 사람들 되라니 되는 이야기야 머리
걔 야스테 이게 단다 되게 사진 이바
디니 신 냠샤데 난가다 돈이 고메 디다 지도 지마다 돈이 체 추노 리버시에바 요로 세라와
그렇게 말 민두다게
데라 나시에바 가제체 리버시에바 지 타디 직타디서
켄슈나게 게 당다게 스타베 서브젝트 요게 리바데 최신의 배우고 저러게 디 페이지게 두버와게 디 드럼네 디 드zam델이야 게 단다 띵이제 개베 도시 롱창도 와게
띵이제 지고 도델이 망보지 빼 망보지 고요도
어디게 빼 망보 저와게 어디 샤나로 와게 제디 와게 서브젝트 니버데 디르도게 가서 최신의 다 여러 요말 서저와게 다디 와더라게 나다 아니 탁게다 가서 다르게 베신에 제 지르지 메서 강가 신의 용줄다게 겐디가 가 송사베
너디 단다 나데가 현저세 디에 강가데
단다 리줄다게
지도 이게 단다 남둥 리바 텔 때네 에네 강가 리바 텔 때네 강가 도르스 뭐 다게 현저로 리바 강가 그레거 민도아
버딜긴디 레디 두다게 게 다르게 와 가바자게 신레게 와 가바자 니가레게 와 가바자로게 레디 두다게 나마 상마
Yeah, it's something that
I think Geshe must have skipped pages or something, I just completely got lost. Again, 단다 되게 다게 디 상마게 신을 시게. 자베 사제 되게 디 와게 단다 콘다게 디로와. 자베 object like 최탐자를 라시도가 같이 요말 사셔로게 디 와들이야 리바디아 최신을 빼서디 차상사게 디 레전지고 차스르다게 디 와니바디게 사제 니바를 쳐로게 아니 다 디다 최신을 다 요러 요말 사셔로게 디 신의 숨겨르게 디 와들게 아니 다르게 바가고 신레게 바가고 니가르게 바가서 강가 신의 용주도게
맞아 저도죠 이다고 디시는 군 대슈디 리바디 현 자야데 데데도 같은 용주르다
라 어디 가장 송사스게 리바션을 자세다 가장 송사르게
시자르베
네 디손에 디오 저 참되게 띵게 개베 도스탄 대샤르게
알데 데
겐베 야만 야베 따로 좀 되게
알레 야치게
I think it shall have been a couple of pages backward, somewhere, right?
시자다 자고도 다데 니마 시사게 시고로
네, 송사르게 손에 다 단다게
니다다디 로지르세야 구오다
알아 말말 괜찮아 야슈고 카시 따로 좀 시게
디시레벨라 대단한
리바데 샬라 자고 슬라르와게 리바데 샬라 자서 저 최신하게 디기 탕잠 주도서 저러와게 데리야 딩게 제베 도고 룽게 숄리카 소르치 요르게 로와 어다 디스나 안디나 마페르게
데페 몽보 용게 데로와디
페 망보 요겐데다게 그 땅마데 추아 배 망보데게 야 샤바지 테스게 말만 배 망보 유저데 배 야슈고 니숨 챈서게
야 도사로와디
배 챈서 근데 마게 슈고 니숨 패서다
시기즈 메로서 노나 또
Yeah, I think I went back to 3 or 6 now I realize,
체지 니 또뉴
근데 마페 로하게 리바데 신라 자서서 디기 카로숭 버와게 디 죽 조서델이야게 띵게 게베 도게 룽츠도 와게 어다디 디네 마게 까낭선으로게 딱딱하게 슈카체 야탈로 진짜
유구는 심어 띵게 지원도 되고 그러면 그러면 되죠 추군이 동바도 섭체되는 중년의 세신 동바도
I think we stopped at page 311 on the top. I marked it. So I think Geshe went back to 306. I seems like because I'm lost. I'm like, what happened?
다 dire 다
Huh?
시작은 저발이
311, right? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. So he went a couple of pages backwards.
뭐버지가 다 괜히 저버지这个东北看也呗，天的滚去东北饮食，去这个是没有东西到位，去过去东西都送回去，这人家现在这样子吧，他讲是看这个是
我现在在的跟那多少个？我现在在哪里呀？跟讲的的啦，把那打到那个，我们把那打到我们这个这边弄起来了，我跟，你我的我们路路个跟早些个弄起来，你个看看路上的我的里呀跟第二嘞，但是听个是这边多个 subject 啥 subject 了哇，你送就来的个。
我查是对的，中医的意思哩。
I think somebody who has a Tibetan text maybe can help Geshe because I have no Tibetan text. I don't know. Huh?
这个现在没另外的就问到送把的下，他你们觉得这个多少了吧？
Lo.
这样的，
Things that give it to the Chazan Duber again. What the all subject they Duber, the all subject they Duber, again. And then that Chazan Duber again, all subject the Duber, Gumbo Ludubki, Sashi, the one game. The man dubs and any church Tamjala, Ranshinki, Mo Yomala, again. The subject Tambo, the church and appears said. Pese duber again. The dubsam get Tamadelia again, things and give it dog lunche or again. This soon do that. And the other again, a church and a tie or Yomalarwa, and they should get Tali, Taki Goba, Rana Javashin, Gasa, Kishi to go again.
Da regime of Dobby, two, Dagi regime, did Dosa Ruju.
Logan.
La,
Gagiki.
did about Dal regime, Sony. 다교와 제 경우 송을 송매 가르세는 다라시면 또 다교 라이면 쇼기도 가르사 리바 고 말세야 돼.
쇼디 베제디 돼.
다 파파 domba somtem 말세. 디
사지. 니마도 대배 초고 타도 좀 와. 좀 스마데 총 한번 이렇게 오늘 공부 되어 잡는다. 대화를 되는 가서 좀 Okay, maybe if you don't mind it, we will just go back. Is it okay? Okay, game songs are my songs are not again. Do it again. Because I'm not going to find this one here on the iPad. Plus, again, songs are not songs and do it again.
that didn't my shade the pesa de keeping do.
So, okay, Geshe said he'll just continue. So, I'd love to hear it again. I don't mind. I'm here only for 2 more weeks. So. Lots of games, songs. Just some get to the right. Jubilee Margo, Mamma. I'm to do that shed order. Yeah, I don't care. I'm talking about man on a shed order. No. He can't go forward. Then we have a problem. Right backwards, okay. I'll game on Jubilee pays again. I think Inji said again. Can Inji David shoot some Chukchi Sha in Bagan? And again, soon the Inji David shoot some Jubilee again, shoot Mangush from Geshe again. Can you shoot back again? Do again? Geshe goes to come out from Geshe again. Can Geshe goes to come out from Geshe? Ah, good. They led what? That you order the things you do the Malway. Oh, there is a yeah, thank you.
La.
The Kazan the target of Bush again. The things give the church down at 10 about the wagon. They can't the things they give it do lunch the wagon. Or there's
the church. Now, the hit us.
That cabin down man.
That you go and the shit us at the picture. Basic key is somebody.
They can't the thing they give it lunch the wagon.
Thank you. That did their picture thing is the long the day legal. Legal is it. Karsa. 다다 가이다 닝에 디 고티니 마지 야스니 셔 녀랑 베림버 그 번호도 다디 자사들이 텔라 강사 디 레디 지베 통지 통지이노 무슨 배셔데 투도시거시
사자 아마도 그저 처지 담에 때는 밥을 가려.
다 디르바 현을 봐야 돼봐 통주
어디 강만달이야 땡에서 예배도 롱스도 와게 와 내내 마성도.
기성에 희네 거 티에라 그때 디디 거라지 샤로 근데 투조지거리
I think basically Geshe had to go back to the calm abiding in my absence, so somehow his text got all mixed up. I don't mind him like going a couple pages backward, but when we skip a couple pages down, then we have a gap.
동시시 동아시 통주시 통주간다 도저 통주시 그거는 또 여쭤지 저 저숨시 제비시 디 그런 다되기 있어요. 다 건지 다른 예시야 디던데는 디레 시잡 공고디 비게자인디 휴 노래는 강현
쇼숨시 시킨 춤시.
투인지 비게
다긴 딩년 나저게 딩에서 예배도 그런
다 디네 커서 당긴 예시야 디 커서는 커서
걔 되게 디선서 걔 제도 규모 답이 지서 오늘 무슨
죽었던데 단디 이제 내가 시잡을 롱 시잡은 되월라서
디배 마슈고 간저 채는 슈고 싱어 춤시게.
there's machines these 다다래샤 슈고는 투인사래
슈.
다 건지 다 디zam들 야 강사 딜웰데서 시네 노인라 다네 엠바 디지딘데 돈에 샤벨레다 쇼보는 딜 리박나마딘 조스가 죽발레제 렘보 생링음에 대단히 시버진 이제 대단한 풍부도 다 지금 뭐 도매원 저데데 로사리 와
근데 어떻게 공부로게 짜셰 롱츠도 와게 짜셰 롱도 가다게 인지나로 요새 부인의 야구 정말 와게 다디 간제 레다 제법 보이게 지시를 해 되는 말
노서 부신 이제 매드 부신세 고벌로 되게다
매드 부신 민도게 말하게 걔한테 슉딱다 니
제들 지대는 또 슈거는 토기라 다만 소전데 봐 투모만 해봤나 이제 댄서 미
대만 이게 남자 간데 샤워를 써야지 이게 질레도 단다디 땡에서 개별도 롱엔들 와게 땡에서 개별 롱엔들 대만 이게 남자로 와게 자다 가르스도 가란 다다랑 신기 두요 말스 매네 안에 가르서 그래 이게 랑신 드루베 기 동방 원래 다디다 요쇼 써져 와게 딘데시도게
초이래 이제 빨리 예비시네 남들이 받인 사람한테 나 초인사르다 랑 오더라 신세 시제번 제와 땡이원 좋아디 시대 동
맞게 시제번 선데게 배 마패 들겠는데
지마다고시 네 현야 유제베제는 메두년의 중시 시제버 저 당긴 열어야 디다디 단다 마신차게 써야 되와
나라게 슈고 숨시 스페셜 시제발레도 괜디 가서 우리 기시 고즈 간거 사설게
라
시제베게 되어 롱들레도 괜 기시 고즈 하람 사로게
디 자시 롱지에 담데 비 시제발레 때 이카다 시바텔레 때 강사 지마다 찾으세요 지마다 시데 대체는 신이 인치이라면 누구 말베
말게 단다디 초그 다음에 이게 댄스 디디오 갈게 루바디 최신을 뼈서 와 요사제 디 하람 사르게 디 슈더게 땡스 게베도 롱처게 단다디 가게 롱도 그때 딱다 도게 no I think that iPad has the exact
슈디 같이 가도스
어디 괜찮다 근데 어디 again 직접 비슈다 again
네네 됐다네
아, 네,
다
수전 맛있게
나다
쓰면
되게 시다 제베 신지 동거 테레 랑이 동바다 랑이 메보다 샤지 테비 데인지 조디시나 디체 탐지라 쳇네 랑시 메바 내가 또봐 nembe ngarshebe pedoni
안디가 니데도 제 태셔 들어가게. 근데 나 디딩스 집에 도 되도 가게 로. 안디 와데 쳐지 담에 등도게.
데 땡이 요도 거다 시다 치케지 나인데 근데 이거 저차 근데 다 드네시야르베
라레 어디서 집에도 롱데 손야 되게. 안디는 마 사제 슝아 되게.
아 알레 알레 뭐 당기디 코베자 코나 디 앙랑데 카저디 초인서 어디 시다 아 다다디 초군데 되가래 다 앙랑 초에서 말해 딩이디 제벌리 데데 딩미 dob준데 뭐이 데 말와 제가 데 동주 시반조와 멜름도 디베디게도 로사로
오케이.
심지 메도 소자 미니데 최든남네 오도 안다 제마데 디베 죽지는 되게 계신 로사
배강가 로사르게 배강가 도마.
로사로
다다 마 패볼게. 딩스 집에 배강가
베 죽지 로사로 이 동시
딩스
다데
집에 배강가 사드네 마 사제 같이 사르게.
다데 로사라시 다다시 다데 시시지 수니 메도 나와서 봐 다데 제마데 세샤데 솔로 가르셰와 리베 가자지 레버 차 차디 쇼라 런주지 머리베 랑시 도다와나 레버 산발라 무에세 바샤 테네 랑시 메 찍다딜 디차라와 또 지시지 수니 메도 나와서 다 즈바이나 델 차지테야디 롱데데 레제 시자발레스 뭐버제 그 동보 따보용
디강 사들어 와.
제시 성이시 유마견제 땅랑데 저바 시바
어디가 사드?
니这东的菜呗
민규 주문은 좀
자 르렌 마시 쉬는 단지 디 시바 제대 멜론나야 되게
지게도 근데도 어디 딩스 집에 딩스 게 슈바.
땡이디 제불 숨바 따 차대세야 되다
대슈하게. 땡스 지난 민규 주상 게 슈바.
숨바 차대세는 다다다레스
어디라면 근데 사실.
라 저 차도에
근데 사실 근데 야 패드 가로.
다디나
방로라.
너는
이게 사요 괜찮아 방로.
다디니
이제 앞에.
티시 다미 대지다 다 돈다 nenjoba namba showa jirse ti jigwediro ta papa domba sum tembale se
디젤 마루
mushi jingwo se den rojiro
뭐지 누지로 디 강을
mushi jingwo rojiro
누지로 디 강데
편지 때에 주바zam도 시에버 쇼 대단한 다들 찍了 지다제와래 랑신지 동바 랑메와 저 테비 대인 주
어디 딩스 집에 도게 지다 취지 가자 어디래 어디
데레
어디래
야 다들
6-7-40
지다제이다 데레 시기 나 두시네 해바디를 자자 시드잖아 에데 데레 그지 되지 가르사 건제 단다 송야들 별 송을 제바시도 다 랑이 저바가가 뭐 다교 랑이 저바고 송요 말세다 대면나 종요 말세 다 랑이 저바가 와테 다교 랑이 저바가 도르세 어디 다다디 돈데 데려와
라레게 다다 딩스 집에 롱데
데와 어디 다 카르다 lö자지 쇼단지 디고 넘버 다바 능가도 찍정 니 탐지니 찍기잖니 탐지도 신이바 시바 데데발 제수바 따로 다 니바 최이 담에 될 바세 데려다
어디 난 딩스 집에 도데 롱데게 롱된 송바로 와
알레
송교르게 안디네 취지 당제 된 바라
알레 엔텐데 덱스 알레 그디샤 최이 담에 될 바, 대샤 이사리 제샤 당가 디 페샤 거다기 무규초 이사리와 어디에 가지 가다 딩스 주 롱데 다 가래 가서 다다 튀야 되라리 에니 sungro ma sung du zan le ene da ran yi zwa ka ma da ge wa da hian da se bo shi ra se yo ma ri shi de men de zhong yo ma ri da ran yi me ba zhe zhe ba da ran ge ene da ge wa ran yi me ba zhe tam je pa sha ni xi ya ri sta dong da dong zhen de.
Okay, so we found the right spot. Those of who have got this text, we are on page 311, volume number 3 in the English translation of Lamrim Chemo. Those who are using some kind of electronic version of the text, Jesus right above the subpoint 2, how to determine that there is no self in phenomena, right above that. So as Geshe explained, that in the text, there is explicit refutation of self of a person, but not so much the self of a phenomena or mind. When we talk about I and mind, there is, explicit refutation of intrinsic I or the self, but not so much the mind. But as Geshe explained earlier also the other day, but we can use the same lines of reasoning or the rationality to be able to refute the intrinsic nature of mind or intrinsic self in other phenomena.
Okay. Da di da do dun ti re do gong ji kan da ra yi ma de ba de de ene rang ji ma de yun de ge nam ja ti jo to na ene ti che tam de de ro ya re si da do do shi de re ta che da de che ji tong ge dong yi dong lo da rang ge ene ge ri ba xian la ja de kon do ma do de ne xian ne ya xian da be xian do ga da gu de re yo ma re so su be che jin lo ga shuo shuo zai do ro re sta do di de ja ya de de rang de.
So the bottom line, the bottom line, this is what the key point is, which is once we are able to use the reasonings to refute intrinsic self or the intrinsic nature of self of a person, okay, then we could use the same reasonings just to be able to refute intrinsic nature of any other phenomenon. As we talked about this already, that once you realize the emptiness of a phenomenon, whatever it is, then it's just a matter of shifting your focus to other phenomenon or phenomena, but using the same lines of reasoning to be able to understand the emptiness of all others. Okay? So that means realizing the emptiness of one is almost like realizing the emptiness of all other phenomena, because as an emptiness, it's just the same. It's just we need to shift our focus to different bases, right, different objects, but using the same lines of reasoning that we will be able to understand the absence of intrinsicness of every other phenomena. Okay, so that is the bottom line. That's the main point, that has been explicated.
Oh, did that do da rang yi me ba de ene da nam du ri ba ge xing de de pe de yong go ni ka ni re ka ni ka sa ra wo ti ya bu he so na she de ri ba da ran che ra re ma de ri ba sa ba ni kai gu go ma ba che ti jar ji she ti ti ta de wi na ta ni ba che da de ba ba ni kan sa de da be xi pong bo nga de kai kan so kam zhou de me la so be ji ji zhou la so be che yin de rang wu zhe be rang yi dong yi che yi da me yin no si ta ji dan de che tam ji 강사 당면 많이 배 당면 현다 강 쉐 당면 세 쉐 담지 레디시나 다단디 유이데베 에 강사 당이 품봉아 주신 시고로 되게 코아 코리아게 베게 쉐 당지 강사 당지 코아 코그르세 코리아디 소소 런지 품봉을 맹는 코아 코그 마도 드마시 난가다 유이 마디브 드절면 코아 코고 마로 시다 어디샤니 다다 디 쉐 담이 시도 품봉아 감정지 강사 유도 시고 지진 어디 임페.
So we're on page 311, and as Geshe explained that we use chariot as an example, and analysis of the chariot involves 7 ways of analyzing a chariot, and we use the same chariot application analysis that also involves analyzing whether or not there is intrinsic self of a person in 7 different ways. So at the end of the analysis, what we conclude is that there is no intrinsic self of a person. Okay? So when we are very affirmative about that, understand that well, now we could use the same 7-point analysis and a chariot example apply them to any other phenomenon or phenomena, and understand how, they too lack intrinsic reality of existence, right? So that's just the main point. So the next sub-point is how to determine that there is no self in phenomena. Okay. So when we talk about selves, generally we talk about two types of self: self of a person and self of phenomena. Okay? So we have already dealt with there is no intrinsic self of a person through sevenfold analysis. Right? We're done with that. We can use the same lines of reasoning to understand there is no intrinsic self in phenomena. Phenomena means apart from a person, everything that exists is a phenomena. Okay? But that being said, in this particular context, phenomena refer more to the 5 psychosomatic aggregates, our body and mind, in other words. Okay? The reason for that is, why we go round and round in samsara is because of our grasping at the intrinsic nature of our psychosomatic aggregates, or the skandhas. It's not so much like we are grasping at the intrinsic nature of a space or a time, Yeah, there are phenomena, but really we go into samsara because of our grasping at the intrinsic nature of our aggregates. Yeah? So our aggregates constitute phenomena because aggregates are not the self, right, of a person. And this is where we deal with how our aggregates also are absent of or lack intrinsic nature.
What did you that was till that dummy show them then be you don't any cause then be to mong to you just then the was and you make you go经过电这电这些就可是电它用上电没就是这个俺是晓得原来是天上哒第个是这里没是见过他是叫我为这个这多的$30,000送要的就到学当没着吧我的这里是送叫没是叫干呢我让你们这么电了怕吧天天这把学当没送本的都得叫我收的用这了送要着我的现在他电脑一些都当因学当没着的他是叫我为这个没是见过是呢我听过认识我们家叫我小我的写下的这些没是就学当没着这个的个没是见过这个写的意思รับเจตองบ่เลยดาเลยมันเฮลเมนเซตาดิโกอยู่อะดิว่าโอติเรดาเลยมันนี่ก็จะยูเมจ่อจิรว่าเฮมันนี่เลยมันยูเมเมงอกันตะจ่อนะยามเชโซตาชินงอบ่กันตะเลยกันตะเลคังนะจ่อนะยามเชว่าตะที่ชินดิทำจะชินโซนะจ่อชาวเสตาดิเตสิวะคาร์ตะทาริจ่อna yo mai de dal jo na yo mai hen jo na ni ga yo jime jo na yo mai sin ini thamja shibo de re le ya na ma yo mai sa jo wa wo di char ji re sa da
So we're on page 311 in the middle, right under the caption, how to determine that there is no self in phenomena. And as I said, in general, phenomena refers to everything that exists that is not self of a person. Yeah, which would include time, space, and all other things. But in this particular context, phenomena refer more to our psychosomatic aggregates of the skandhas because these are associated with our mind stream. And because of grasping at them as being intrinsic, we go round and round, merry-go-round in samsara. Okay? Not so much we are grasping at the intrinsic nature of the space, therefore I'm in the samsara, but it's because of grasping at the aggregates. As Geshe explained, that there are 5 prominent lines of reasoning or analysis used to establish the emptiness of intrinsic reality, which would include, for example, the reasoning of singularity and multiplicity, right? Whether things are intrinsically identical with each other, one, or they are intrinsically different from one another. In Tibetan. Okay, those who are keeping track of the Tibetan. Okay. Then, of course, there is the reasoning of dependent arising of paritya samudpat, tendejeta, right, which is considered as the king of reasonings. Then there is the reasoning of refuting the 4 types of production. Okay, and in this particular context, as we deal with the self of phenomena, how there is no intrinsic self of phenomena, the reasoning that we use, analysis, it involves 4 what called refuting 4 types of production. Okay, 4 modes of production. Yeah, production from self, production from others, production from both, production, without causes and conditions. Okay, and so that particular reasoning is used to be able to establish the emptiness of self in phenomena or self of phenomena. So as we look at each of those refutations, right, we come to 4 types of conclusion, damja, right? There is no production from the self. So we have to be really sure about that, right? There is no production from others. There is no production from both. There is no production from without causes and conditions, right? Yeah.
What is it? That deal ya any rangi chiba dungi so any dubji ndugu rangi chiba dubji mena rangi chiba in so da in jigu maro. Tell you the rangi chiba dubji tell any taji jawa deal shagoro. So the taji jawa tia the rangi can the jewel turn the jig garza badu jig jewel turn the jig says in she any jewel turn the jade da get a shenjing the inside. 对不对？你是看中这边，觉得对吧？那样，知不得经营上一这他的，你是好多叫谁的大叫是吧？觉得对的，那觉得知不你让些这把的，他的的是呢，让些这把搞的大叫搞呀是，让些他的搞呀的现在搞呀是，但觉得对吧？那样们大叫过，样们呢，那现叫的，你嘛是觉得呢，那叫要么了，我就说了，觉得对吧了，让知不得，因让些这他的，你是好多小吧，一弄些的，但也常些吧个，那觉得知不你让些这把我这把意思，那么就他的嘛都是，那长大的这把的是，那少问了牛个药的事情，知道是吧？我这是的，你看中修个的是，他得了有的这个，那叫了呢，大家的让些他的叫你现在因为得到了样。当些人的，但是那些人我的，那些错误的结果，你是也了，是吧？那些你个叫啥子？但人叫的，那叫现叫些，但你个错误是那些你个解释的，记住就是现在，这个让心下现在那这个的方式，那个他的结果现在，那些你个解释下去，记住吧，他是还是牛，记住没有多这里。也了，人了呀，大家的些你别没去叫我怎么去告别是，他先路呢，知道的人弄是，他的那些的那。他让人这个影响的，在他们这些，这里就真的了，大叫的，心里叫，一个你们叫是不是？他这个人看的看，大叫那。有的我这个看的，我这个那他就是一条这个就他的对面就介绍这个嘛了哇，现在叫那觉得这不你平时对面上面说，你就这个那下头嘛了，而且是他叫的，现在叫你干面看着人的干啥的怎么，大家现在你干叫啥，提小的干着了哇，我这个他你们叫的平时讲为么一些人不弄个么，现在来了个说刚当这不得的是，但多点地方的。
So at the bottom of page 311, we have a stanza quoted from R.A. Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise, which highlights the 4 types of production. And I quote, there is no sense in which anything has ever been produced either from itself, from something else, from both, or without a cause, unquote. Okay, so that's the source of the 4 types of production. And then on top of page 312, that whole passage, Geshe's explanation pertaining to that, which I'm going to translate now, is this. When it is contended that things are, produced, the 2 questions we can ask in general, are they produced from causes or they're produced without causes, right? And then you say, well, they are produced from causes. Okay? So then, in regards to that, if they're produced from the causes, then we can ask, are the causes and effect are of the same identical nature, in other words, intrinsically one, or are the causes and outcomes of the results intrinsically different, right? They are distinctive and they are different. right? Those are the two questions we would ask. And so many schools of thought would say that things are produced from their causes. Okay? And for example, the enumerators, the Tibetan term is Tangjenpa, okay, which is literal translation enumerators. So they would assert that causes and the effects, they are intrinsically of the same nature. They're identical. Okay? And their example is when you look at a seed and a sprout, sprout already exists in the seed. Okay? It's just not manifested. And so the sprout and the seed as cause and effect are of intrinsically one. Okay? It just simply has to manifest. It already is there. Okay? And of course, we have to refute that. How if they are intrinsically one, then how can you talk about something being produced? You're producing yourself, right? What does it mean? Because when you talk about producing, it's two things, right? Here is something, a producer that produces a product or whatever we call it, right? So when you are just one, what does it mean? What is a producer and what's a product? It is not, making any sense here, right? That's the one issue. Okay, that's the part of how we refute production from self. The understanding is intrinsic production from the self. Then there are others who might say, no, things are produced from causes, but the causes and the outcomes or the results are intrinsically different. Okay, they're not the one and the same thing. And but in that case, then the cause and effect should not have any kind of relationship, isn't it? The intrinsic by its nature means something that can withstand on its own. It does not require anything else to exist. So if you say that cause and effect, are different and somehow they're dependent on each other, right? Well, that somehow undermines the intrinsicness of things, isn't it? So how could, you claim that something is produced intrinsically, but at the same time it's dependent upon something else, and those two things are not the same, different, cause and effect. Yeah? So that's part of refuting production from others, right? Production from intrinsically others, things. Okay? So once we're able to refute production from self and production from others, it is easier to refute production from both self and others. There are, I think Geshe said, maybe the Chirpuba, I think, are the Jains. So they say that phenomena are of the same nature, but situationally they are different. So they're kind of saying like they're same, but they're different at the same time, isn't it? So they would be the one who say that, and so that kind of thing is refuted here. And then those who claim that things are produced without causes and conditions, right? That's only Charvakas or the Gyangpemba, right? They said things just exist like that. And so that's how the analysis of refuting for productions, it works, isn't it? If something is produced on its own, okay, then we cannot talk about cause and effect, right, in that condition. But if something is produced intrinsically from other, and that other cannot be different from, right, because intrinsic existence implicates that you can stand on your own. You don't need anything else. So what is this other doing in your life, so to speak? He didn't say that. That's not making any sense. Okay.
인 치마즈는 놈 통하면 빼강 놈 통하여 시다 빼강 놈 타먹을 요사 쨌는 통용 거레스 치마 놈 매자 인 조르 텔이야 비게 가르사 타블로 가르시다 놈 통하여 말이스 시다 줄주 요사 주지 테티워다 그 대셔 가르사 제 대나게 이 상제다 스도 행동적인 행동래야 행동 내가라 조리 행동제는 리부 담에 담지 너무 뭐샤고 말해 되게 요래서 가르서 여기 지대 가르서는 행동 그런 그 지고다 담에 담지 해야 되게 상장에 있는 지고 지바샤 그러왔어
알아디나를 행동 요스탄다
다 내라서 봐서야 네가 가서 네가 지바샤 그리고 행동을 되어야다 제선 영주고 말가 찍바레스 너도 강가도 왔어 제가 되고도 육고론 주고 여러분들 육고도 유이도 집사님은 사도 수에도 째어요 말서 나게 돼야 되면 되래
Just maybe a little bit more explanation about those who accept a production from self, as we said, enumerators or tangchenpa, right? They insist that the effects or the results must necessarily exist in their causes. Okay? Otherwise, how could causes bring out their results? It's just impossible. And they give many examples. And they said, for example, if we from sesame seeds, we can get sesame oil, isn't it? Oil already exists in the sesame seeds. That's why, when you put it through the process, you will get the sesame oil. But if you put the sand grains through the process, you are not going to get any oil. He said, why? Because sand grains never have oil inside them. That's why you cannot make new oil in the sand grains. It has to exist in the causes. Yeah? So that's why they said that sesame seed and, for example, its oil are of intrinsically one nature. It already exists there. It's producing itself. Okay? And then, let's say, another example Geshe used is if there's a tree, right? You cut down the tree into pieces. They said still the tree exists in these pieces. And they said, how do you know? Well, if you weigh the whole tree and then you put all the pieces of the weight, they have the same weight. He said, that's why the tree still exists in these pieces. They weigh the same thing. And those are the examples and explanations they would use to claim production from self.
어디 지루바 세다 다 어디야 다디 코라 다 딱바서 제왕아지 코라 다라 용원자 다 가마 치마제 다딜 커사 다 제와이스 다 풍부 사바사바 랭거 저를 풍부를 랭데 풍부되네 현재 인식으로다 어디 이가 지어서 되래다
아 지부 그러면서 다들 랑게 제르게 다게제 풍부의 신제
어디 다 강사 교환을 저는 남의 교환되다 다들 풍부 인된 지거와 제 교환시나 제가 나도 딱 봐라 제가 나 다대다 남의 다 직봐라 정식 봐시
이제 닥지도 그러
다 니가 교환하고 됐다
알로
나게다 현진이가 다 현재서야 그래서 교환을 풍부 사와를 랑냥 제거와 될 현 교환시 저 풍부의 시도도 하고 그러면 또 기도하여 말아 나도 상관없는 용 정식 봐래요
다 딱와이네 다 닥지도
다 딱봐 인도선 나한테 풍부할 때는 다 사와를 주고 말해
알레 어때서 알레 네 닥지샤도 그랬어
다 뒤집고 남의 다 때는 닥게시 풍부도 때는 현실을 그러 어디 니가 좋아해야 돼
Chirpupas or the Jains, I hope I'm translating it right, so remember the Tibetan term, Chirpupa, which literally means the naked ones, they don't like to wear clothes. So they claim production from both self and others. And how they do that is they said there is a permanent self or Atma, let's say, right? It exists forever, from past to this life to the next life, because it's permanent, it just exists. But then what's happening is every time we take a rebirth, there's a new body, isn't it? So the body of the aggregates are kind of produced from others, situationally, right? You have a new body, and then kind of the new self is encapsulated in that body. But self is actually self-produced. That's a part of the permanent self. It just simply got embodied in a new body. The body is produced from others, and so they claim, production from both self and others with that kind of explanation.
어디 다 대지야지 그래서 지부도 이제 당신 얘기할 때는 먼저 그 풍부로서 강사 요 말했어. 저다 치료부 가가 찍고 찍자래. 풍부대 그래서 네 강반나 이제 나한테 먼저 맨날 이셔거라. 자 나도 그 니는 되냐 강바 보시나 지고 거기 밑에가 대대는 강바 현대도 미치고 와. 어디 당이 찍어라 와. 네 로샤자 먼저는 대야 풍부 파비는 다요 말했어. 풍부 소송다 다셔 그러면 예, 풍부파비는 다 통로야 말했어요. 드네 시험을 해서 그것도 뇌도 되던 거 같다.
So in our Buddhist perspective, self is very much dependent upon the collection of aggregates, isn't it? Apart from the aggregates, there is no such thing as self. But non-Buddhist many schools of thought, my footnote, that's the Indian schools of thought, not all non-Buddhists around the world, I suppose, they accept that there is Atma or the self that is, independent of the body. So what's happening is body is just like a house. Self is like the guest. The guest can change houses, isn't it? Today you're here and tomorrow in another guest room. But the houses will stay. The guests, can move around. So they said there's a guest that's very distinctive and separate from the houses, and the guest is not really dependent upon the house. He or she is free to do whatever.
我这里个啥，进入这对的这些，他当不当些个呀定下来，牛股的让当你的叫他们问觉得叫看的叫叫的当你头发叫这的牛股让当你头上被写了，别那我把事情牛，他这里长这边牛股了，我把事情的我把马上是影响是吧？现在上午那个用的我把马上不是些，但刚才用那现在到底刚刚他也不牛的了，我把事牛是个是吧？现在但这些的可是呢。过去3把节就可能我特别就从那结果是吧？因为他我可能越来越个那结果啊，没得话，可能越不是吧？我就是说，要对越那样越结果呢，你样就叫他们他个是我说，我听他的别看的个是我把谁牛就是说，我是别个同样的长这边那样就结果是我嘛的，上午那个有个的样就结果是我，就每个同做这样的样就结果是嘛是吧？ 现在每个都要有个养小姐们的话，结果没得，这几个去了上午那个有个的纽约些的，因为节目过的，过切菜那些，每个都要有个的几个人话是的那个的。
So we're on page 312, right in the middle. The first refutation reads refutation of production from self. Okay, and out of that you find the passage, and Geshe-la's explanation pertains to that. As Geshe-la mentioned earlier, that Tangchenpa or the enumerators, they claim that things are produced, from themselves. So they accept production from self. And a prominent example they would give is that of a seed and a sprout. So they will say there's two types of sprout. Sprout that is unmanifested and sprout that's manifested, isn't it? So during the time of the seed, they said there is a sprout inside the seed. It's just not evident. It's not manifested. Otherwise, how can the seed produce a sprout? It has to be there. Okay? But when we sow the seed and the seed germinates, what do you see? A sprout. Well, they call that the manifested sprout. Okay? And so that's why they claim it is just, producing itself. And those who refute that kind of production, they say, what need is there to produce something that is already produced? If you claim that, then there will be endless production, right? If something is already produced, what needs there to produce it again? And if you still claim it needs to be produced again, then when does it end? It should produce, it just keeps going. Okay? And so as a part of refutation, they point at the manifested sprout, right? The seed that has already germinated sprout. So they said, look at that manifested sprout. Does it need to be produced again? They would say no, because they accept that's already produced. What they say is the seed, the sprout that's unmanifested, that's dormant in the seed needs to be produced. But they're not going to say that the manifested sprout needs to be produced again. He said, so why does it need to be produced again? What's the difference? You already claim that the sprout already exists in the seed, right? It's already produced, so to speak, exists in the seed. So why it need to be produced again? It's just like this manifested sprout that does not need to be produced again. So how do you explain that? So that's the challenge to the enumerators of the Tangchenpa.
我这里觉得，这里用人当中叫同面色等等这些，但同面色的上，他们可能见的那样结果那结出来咱那个小个话是，我的时候他可能叫同面到他同面色的，没可他们有的要的结那样结果是呢，他这样结被。 So
two fallacies are pointed out with regard to the enumerator's contention that things are produced on their own or from themselves. The number one fallacy is it's just meaningless. If something is already produced, why does it need to be produced again? That makes no sense, fallacy one. But then still you claim that it needs to be reproduced. Then when does the production end, Because everything has to be produced over and again, produced over again. So there is no end to the whole production process, isn't it? So when does the job of production finishes, right? Can we say, like, it's already produced? You can't, because it needs to be produced again. Well, is it done? No, it needs to be produced again. So where is the end here with that process? So those two fallacies are pointed out to the enumerators, that it's a meaningless production and it's endless production, right? Those are the issues with your claim.
或者是他的生意这个呢，这是我的感觉。东道的大下上，如果要检查的讲是用这些呢，那当个的他如果检查这面的这么个样当这些，那得必须当下嘛的。我对这个嘛的时候，检查的样结果呢，因为这东道对呢，应该投资上这个嘛的话，可样检查过了，他嘛就得晓得吧？我的时候。
So, if things produce endlessly, then there is no way to do harvesting time, isn't it? Right? We have plantation time, season, and things are produced, things grow, and then things mature, and things are never harvested. So there is not going to be harvesting time because things will be producing itself endlessly, right? So that makes no sense again, right?
我是这大日本的叫我同学的，同学日本人的呢。ina dakye me do to res karwa thong me ko ngo top sa ni top sa we shi jik jang top sa na yang jie go sen ina ko jie cha we kap zan me ba sha do ti na ina be de da dong do de de cui du ya zang du de go ko ka du ne jie go go ro wo ti ka ji ni shi ni de wo ti de jie ko ka mi ni be jong ni jo ro sa ka ji xing ba zo
No. So the bottom line, is that two fallacies are pointed out, to the enumerators, that there is a problem with your contention with the production from the cell. Number one is a meaningless production. If something already exists, what need is there to be brought it into existence, isn't it? That's a meaningless thing. And relatedly, if something that already exists need to be brought into existence again, or something that already is produced need to be reproduced, then when does the production end? It becomes endless production, and then farmers are never going to be able to harvest any crops, right? They are in the business of cultivating field. The field they are cultivating need to be produced over and again endlessly, so there is not going to be harvesting time, So what's the whole point of cultivating a field here?
我大地空的这些你是把来讲，觉得这不这个呢是让些这个呢是我说，接下去这个就是他觉得这不是那这，他的对面这个都这个呢接下去下要么是吧？这些，现在如果来讲，真的听了说了用这个月嘛，叫吧，那叫，如果没，就是那叫要到吧，就那这些如果那说。如果说一叫你们去他对的，看见他动作我也考这个么子写的嘞，是吧？写的，其实我们到了就让台湾的，第二趟呢，今天这个马云诺写说啥，是吧？今天把个当个大动作明显在那个地方是，他用这就是那个嘛，是吧？现在个这样菜的话，我就是的，我的空气，那第一天今天这个马云诺写说啥，但是空气里面。So at
the bottom of page 212 and top of page 313, so we have some textual citations to support what has been already explained. And for example, we have Arya Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise states, I quote, "If cause and effect were the same, meaning intrinsically one, same, then the produced and the producer would be the same. Then we cannot talk about, something that produced something else, something as a producer and something as the product, right? We can't because they are intrinsically same. So that is not making any sense. Then Chandrakirti, in his commentary on the Middle Way, talks about how that cell production is a meaningless production. If something is already produced or exists, what need is there to be reproduced or need to be brought into existence again? And if he still insists it's going to happen, well, then it will be endless production, and that is not, making any sense. Then on top of page 313, the two lines what it states is that, it's against the conventions of the world. The farmers know the different seasons. This is a plantation season, this is a harvesting time, right? It goes against that. The farmers will never have a harvesting time because crops need to be produced and reproduced, and and there is no end to that, But that goes against the conventions of the world,
Hill Jai Yamane, Rayita de Gilchen, Major Mumbato Bajordi, He in Bishero, here you churma Tamji, Dibu Tamji Jawa Jote, he so many Bisheba Wasa. That did a conje. Royi Triva Gilchen, Rayin Triva Tadi Karsa Desi Warda. Dream Tonye Tadi Kabum Nashi, Jawatan Mercy. And then Jawatan Meva Juni Shaguyana. Any big near someone near the Drake someone Drake, the Namja Yomar, usually do consume Jesua. But this other in the measure like Mumbatu Jayata. And then no Karsa, Mezabu, the Mumbali Nawaja sort of that country gone to Jigden, goes to a Chajiganga Gedo, something Gedo resort.
So with that, so let's say we have dealt with the production from self, how that's very problematic, and it has two major fallacies, and therefore it is not working. Yeah. So now the next point is refutation of production from another or other. That's on top of page 313. And the issue here is if a cause and its effect or result are intrinsically different, then they cannot have any kind of dependent relationship or any kind of relationship between the two. Yeah? Intrinsically different means that they have nothing to do with each other. It's just like the pillar and the vase, right? And they cannot be cause and effect of each other because they have nothing to do with each other. It has to be that. Yeah? And if you still claim that cause and effect are intrinsically different, still they could produce, right, each other, then it's as crazy as saying that the flame or the light can produce darkness, darkness can produce light. Why can't it be? They don't have to relate in any way. It's just like anything can happen, basically, and which go against the conventions of the world and what we conventionally validly perceive. For example, rice only grows out of the rice seeds. Okay, and the barley grows out of the barley seeds. So the barley seed don't produce rice, and neither do the rice seed produce. Why can't they do that? If things are intrinsically different, and you claim that they could still produce each other, there's no reason why barley seeds can't produce rice and rice seeds can't produce barley, because they don't have to have any kind of correlation or any kind of relationship. So that is not making any sense. So that's the main point.
What this goes up? Seven, then you will around water in Kalen and son you the road Geshe melts over leisure because Lota wrong you so only around you tied some soon in young in number times somber now was what did it happen? Rangi driver tidy someone that you go in the Rangi driver tidy in Badam, someone that Benada. The jokes and the daughter, someone in Tadi said, the Tadi here, Rangi Tadi in the Zan, Dremeto Tadi in Chibajan Rigora. So the Dremeto Tadi in and then Dribuketo, this Dolly Dribukar Dolly Nugumaja Nashi, someone in Nugumaris. Carson, Rangi Tadi and Dremeton Tadi, Dremeton in Jude Marwa. What is it? Joamedan, Jude Kamato shower.
And so if causes and effects are intrinsically different from each other, then it is like you're claiming that unrelated phenomena, right, can produce each other. And so if that is the case, then anything can produce anything should be able to. There's no reason why not. And we know that the rice seed can only produce rice because there is a relationship with the rice and the seed. Okay? But if that kind of relationship doesn't need to be there, requirement, and if barley seed can produce rice, then there's no other reason why anything can't produce anything else at all. Then you can say that why can't the rocks and pebbles can produce the rice, There's no reason, because they don't need to be related at all. Right?
Oh, dear, that what did the word? That don't hear from the country, don't you to us at Cardigan, Conlo to me, Tutor, Silver.
No.
What he said that did told you that tapping the table man and enjoy your man, and then Geshe enjoy me, even until Dribica take Marwa, what he said. Ta ibe ta de rong rong la ra ma la ba xian du rong sabun le ta de ba ne xue yang ta de yi cha ne de da nang o ta de nang su de da ge rong ngo gon ji rong xin yin na mel so ba le me je wa tang sabun nyu mi da sabun li je che ba na ba ta ni je mi ni ba yin no se de da ngo zo yong zha xe na in sabun nyu je ge es
No.
ro da do da de sa de je ge ma de se je ro wa ti ji de ngo zo cho de ro wa
No.
de rang yi zhe san ta ji de ma na ya ga me yo de ro ro
No.
de ro
No. So when we talk about intrinsic existence or production for that matter, what that really presupposes is that something can exist absolutely independent of anything else at all. It does not require anything else for its existence. It does not depend upon anything. It does not need any parts or parcel of itself. It just exists on its own. But that's the understanding of intrinsicness. Okay? So with that in our mind, if cause and effect are intrinsically different, then each of them should be able to exist, right? Independent of each other completely. They should be unrelated. And yet you claim that one is a cause and one is the effect. It's like a producer and a product. How can you claim a producer and product or agent or action when you claim that things are intrinsically existed? It's just not flying through. It makes no sense. Yeah? And that goes against the valid conventions of the world. When everybody knows, right, all the farmers, they know what kind of crops do they want, what kind of seeds do they need to bring, buy. And so that whole valid experience we have of how the rice seeds produce rice and barley seeds produce barley, not each other, that whole valid experiences that the world has will be undermined and destroyed. Because now anything can be produced by anything else,
我这是给的见没前半截呢，那是见没见谁的他，一定用上俺都我说有的叫牛个少问牛个家多了牛个没叫前边要了吧，我得要的是，那为呢，但可是前边要呢，因为少问牛个他得的多子，因为牛个他得他得了呀，吹的了前边切过的是一定要懂的是吧？但可能人家让一这边他得没几块人呢，因为你把帮助嘛的是。他让一路他的嘛，人家当中面呢，人退我了吧？我的说他，你看啥？我说说的，他牛个来烧饭，可是烧饭了牛个节，多了牛个没叫的，前边要人，那前边要人是他那个的话，的我说牛个嘛了吧？我的忙用人，他的呢，他提出来了，前边写过都是说的，应该让一之外人些的，像老基本都是，让一之外是老些呢，那多的烧饭他，看牛个他的话的。烧饭牛个他的几块几样是吧？他的几块几样，那这里没解释，老头嘛是吧？我就是我。
We're still on page 313 in the middle section, and so the what should I say? The argument against the claim that is cause and effect are intrinsically different. If that's the case, anything can produce anything else, because intrinsically different means things are not related with each other. They don't have to be, and so that's not working. Okay? Whereas in the world, we all can agree and see that a rice seed is sprouting and it is producing the rice seedling, whereas the rocks and pebbles, however you sow them in the field, they're not going to produce that. So there's a difference, isn't it? Rice seeds produce rice seedlings, but the rocks don't produce rice seedlings. Okay? So how do you explain that difference? If you claim everything is intrinsically same, and everything exists intrinsically and intrinsically different, then you cannot explain why can't the rocks produce rice, but the rice seeds can produce rice. So you have to come up with a different explanation, basically, why rocks don't produce rice and the rice seeds produce rice. Now, what kind of difference is that? So just don't simply use intrinsicness, because in terms of that, they are same,
我这个是，现在现在个牛类人吧，这叫 현임도세 양 제도 살리 사봉ले 현디조와래 누구께와 대기운데 매다 소알라서와래 네지 사봉라서 다양 조로 저제 될 데서다 영면은 애는 누구 사고는 누구 매겨와시 영면은 누구의 리메 통해 너다 애는 강수마서 누구 깨야지 코인 고즈시는 누구 깨는 깨님 매겨는 매점 때 가르선 로히르베 타디 리메 통해 타디 뭐시 버려요 어때서
양주성 등이
라
양주성 등이 지코마스
this 단다 타디 다디 개발 치에도 우리 라비는 다 리메 통해 타디 있나도 누구 깨쇼요 답변은
알로
제 쇼요나
라로와
이니 누구래 가르사 데 돌에 누구께 이 누구 사올래 누구께 내기 사올래 내게야 내기 사올 내게야 어 초고로 왔어 유직 봐라 너 이제부터 다 찍어야 뭐 찍어야 유직 봐이나 니부터 샤투 봐라 어디서
we are at the bottom of page 313 as Geshe explained that if they still insist that cause and effects are intrinsically different, even though they are completely unrelated in that sense, they are intrinsically different, but yet they can produce each other, then there's really no good reason why, anything cannot produce anything else. Just like they can claim that barley seeds can produce barley sprouts and rice can, it should also be equally possible that the rocks can produce rice and barley and anything else can produce anything else. Because when you claim everything is intrinsically existent, intrinsically different, there's no slightest reason, why, you just have to only claim that rice seeds can produce rice. Why can't the rocks produce rice? There's no reason, really.
What did the lad work Savile Joa de Pumata Nabula Sobale, there Joachim, then the Tonga mind is that Mozo Nova Dengoroa. Cheta, Remeton, Ribute, Geshe, any time Carsa Pumata Nambule and Nukia, or days of nature, the younger, didn't Yomaro, and then the Tonga mind is the Mozo Tonya de and Jake someone in Jake, Nays of nature, the daughter Sata Casa, Tindele. 이든 디비게 말봐. 어디 무슨 그 통도 여자. 무슨 그 너가 된세 들어. 직대는 무슨 통세 디네가 돼.
So as a part of refuting production from other or another, it is said that what they claim directly contradicts direct valid perceptions of the world. Right? We the humans, we are not stupid. He didn't say that. I just have to use that. We know what kind of seeds produce what kind of crops. Yeah, we know that I want rice, so I'm not going to put barley and hope for the rice to come out. I know rice seeds can only bring rice. Or I want barley, so I'll put barley seeds. Okay? And that is a valid, perception of that. So what you claim is completely contradicted by. It is being contradicted by the direct valid perceptions of the world. So, how do you explain that?
What did that? She saw some base that no state house, nobody will say the end days in your house.
So we stop right at the bottom of page 313, and Geshe said he doesn't want to start the next page because that is a really complex concept, so better not open it now as the time is almost up. So we welcome your questions, observations, or clarifications needed. We will be happy to do that. Let me take it.
Take it, yes. Now, it seems to me that the enumerators, they're being debated here, but they seem to have an entirely different notion of prediction, first of all, what prediction is.
Mm-hmm.
For them, prediction is prediction. It seems to be that they're the making of not the coming of a thing into existence, but the making of a non-manifest into manifest.
Uh-huh.
So this is a different notion of production
Okay.
altogether. So, and the second one is the second point is that again they do not seem to claim that things are intrinsically the same.
Or they do
Because they don't, because, or if they do, their notion of intrinsic existence is entirely different.
Okay.
Because
What do you think is their notion of intrinsic? Yeah.
no, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It must be different because there's just no way. If because things, it's so obvious that if things are intrinsically the same, they would be the same in every regard.
Right.
That means that the seedling, the
Right.
seed and the seedling will be the same.
Right.
So it's
But that
quite
is
obvious. This is just obvious refutation of their position, which means that the conclusion I come to is that they have a different notion of intrinsic existence. So because of these 2 points, I don't see
The
how
first
why
one is you said they claim that the seed.
they have a different notion of production altogether. When
Of
they
production,
use
that's right.
production,
Okay.
and
Yes,
the other
sure.
one is probably
Okay.
they have a
I
different
got it,
notion
yeah.
of intrinsic
I
existence.
understood. Thank you. I'll go back ask Geshe. Thank you. Korangi di condition again. That the Changjambagi that tanda dirwa takju kwai dirwa again. Setu tanda Korangi samtam we na Changjambagi da gen kyewa sa chorwa.
그래.
Said the ngarazo kyewa sa ni ko kodun di kaga de de meros or again. Kan konza kar lagu said the galia saben ko negapsu kasa nyugo de yorsla. Ngomba misebe su dirwa again.
그래.
Right, in that one miseba since the segu or restaurant. Says the concept gave us a duco, one miseba the segu is our wagon.
그래.
Because the gave us a codon kagaman restaurant.
그래.
Nina concept and a castle that Judah Devoni and Rangshin to be chickens, lucky in a manner wagon.
그래.
Hagomedusa, lucky you in a concept Rangshins, loving and answer than the Rangshin to a Sajerwa.
그래.
The codon, the Koran's codon, mother you sigma reservoir, concept Rangshin to a loving a wagon.
그래.
Tanya Pejach in a tonda kagaman ros or the
알레.
sense of it. Good tonda niru condition or wagon.
다
konje kieva la ko den de kaga yin sig les ro ge konje di lego wa mo bar se da mi se be tan yi shi de konje kieva se ko den di ro ge
그래.
da ane rangshin ru ba chik se de konja je chik san rangshin ru ba chik lagi yin me ngan zo la ba ne shin yin da kyo de shu go ro wa sa ge ro wa konje rangshin ru be ki ko den kaga yo mar wes
알레. 랑지 주바서 되데 다 랑지 메지 과 직경래. 랑지 주바 되게 뭐도 랑지 주바 민도 그 수지 요 말아.
no so
다 자제에서 와.
ji bu ji ya res no
다다 장세 그런 좀 뭐다 하세요. 나 좋아하세요. 나 좋고 상거 걸었던 거라서나. 제가 당연히 소시요 봐. 지부세 유카도 메나. 애니 거 최레무도 망고 수루시네 양전 지부 사바데 저도 말이지. 제가 티시도 지부가가 지내가 요레스. 근데 심화제는 심화 코로나 더분노 메인서 딱고 중국어도 저거서 신는 놈 손해요 말아. 그래서 더보고 그런 줄티 다다 놈도 메인서 그 놈 통화 말이지. 다 누구도 야 간서도 깨워야 그래서 그 누구 코로나 당보고 사몬 코로나 누구 요인서 인코 실리데 되게 야 태운데 아니 그 미통야리 야 깨워도 어디 요레스. 당보고 누구 코로나 띵 되게 메는 야 통야 연구 말이지. 그 사무됐던 거라.
라면 마다 코란 진 디메르서 게 코란 식사다만 예산바 단다 뉴구 등원발 미세베스도 유여서 와게
그래.
내가 콘제 배나 거다 남아서다게 디삼당면서다 기업에 타니 제가 아여서 와게 그 딜라 거라 왔다 사변날 뉴구도 요레스라 와게 인 유여도 그 기업에 시작에 아여서 와서 그 기업에 시도 갈 원발 세바도 마시 그 기업을 라기도 왔게 자자 기업을 디 고등 가가면
그것도 깨어야 된다. 그런 삼문에서는 누구 깨서 매고 통해야 되는 거지. 누구 깨어서 지난다 그런 그 누구 사봉도 누구 요서로 와.
유여서 올라온 내가 기업에 타니 저거
누구 요는 그 사봉도 누구 요는 누구 깨서로 왔다. 언제시는 누구 깨서로 와.
내가 언제 친다면 코란이 세면 게
그래서 그때 누구 다 뭔가 세세 요말인데 지단 깨서는 요대로 왔다. 깨서라고 하면은 유여서 어디 유여서 와. 세다 그 가서 봐도 아니 사봉 누구 요나 인 콜이야 베조시 동도다 시가 메다스 그런 다 먹고 유역하고 거바면도 왔을라로 거바 요리스 뭐버 세고레스 로 뭐바 와서 세아디 동다리 거바 요리 데라고로 다 뭐바 세고나 아니 저런 뭐바 세고 세나 아니 뭐바 세세면 누구테 라야 깨고 말 깨고 리베스 티고 데고 깨먹으라고로 그 돈아디 영시지하면서 어디 깨먹고 라야 깨먹어서는 그 지부탄지 인데 달 좋아해서 때도 예도 저런 거 벌써 지부 영적 깨고 구문다 달 깨고 구문도 왔어. 인 저런디 윤재게 그 Dubutai dal jesse I think ye do those. Ngomba season the gare.
다르와.
Dal jewomara.
지금으로.
Yamsi jayomara.
다르와.
He said nature Kende dal join saying it's in ye do those. The ngomba season you would like a gun send the cook killing on what Yamukasura. I said that Koran killing Yamukasia did down. In the Koran, Kende Ganga and the Tambokun Julie have a chap said in Yawachawara. Shawara. Moba says you do go Yamukola. What is it?
알로스. 단다 가서 뭐 말씀에 취대로 그 기회 단지 자극이 말고.
어제에 타이 저기 말이야. 다 유에서 다 이제 타이 자자 마찬가지 유라고. 다
라신 주백이 그 고된 집어 차도 그러.
그러이 들어서 지금 말이야.
Okay, so two things. The first one, Geshe just simply state that in terms of intrinsic, the idea of intrinsic is the same, and they accept. So it's so with regard to your second point of the question, where enumerators claim that seedling exists in the seed, unmanifested form, but when it sprouts out, then it's a manifested one, right? We look at that. I think they may not claim that the seed is already produced the seedling is already produced in the seed, but it exists there. If it doesn't exist there, then it cannot produce it. Just like the example, like sand grains cannot produce oil, right? Only sesame seeds can produce oil. So then the argument that's laid out is, okay, let's work with the manifested sprout. Okay? You claim that everything is produced by itself, right? So this thing already is produced, and so how does your cell production work? Because it needs to be produced by itself, right? That's the manifested sprout, right? So then there's no end to that. There's no reason why it needs to be produced, because you already agreed that it's already manifested. Then it needs to be produced over and again. So that's where the whole argument is laid out. Yeah, okay. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
So I'm wondering from a meditative standpoint,
yes.
If it is beneficial to consider one phenomenon and find clarity within that one phenomenon, and then change to another phenomenon, find clarity within that. Because I'm going back to one of the first things you said, which was if you understand the emptiness of one thing, it should translate. Or is it more beneficial to consider the totality?
Totality of right. Sure. Okay. Sure. Kuna condition did it. That also com nyamling ngene tebi nasro again. ane ganzo da tbana tame ine da tanda di ka pa ga go ro again. 최진 체다바 찍랑 로 와겐 꼭 카르체 대회나 로 와겐 디 야그레 야나 최진 망고시비로 와겐 최 탐제로 랑신 머루고 로 와겐 최 탐제기 랑신 주버 카테나 로 와겐 디 체고고라 코라 사마다기 ken디 바 치기 타보 가이메 되는 거 있다고 써요 로 와겐 최지기 되는 돈이 돈은 사마도 알슬라 와 제가 최지 코라토라 아래 증식이 있나 로 와겐 랑신 주다 먼두다 가레네 로 와. 양육 망고시비도 먹어제 최 탐제기 주도서는 말을 이렇게 자디 야가나 사다 꼭 검 냠랭 거 돈이 때문에 로
Dede 경고를 시도 다가래. 지다 최리 시자 장가 요마디 형들 봐도 나도 풍분이가 시우도 뭐 이제 드마시 나가가 데데 개개 뭐도 이거 시고 다 실제 거기 나도 나요 랑시 저와 될 때네 에네 코아 디세 또서도 코아 줘야 남자 쳐고로 와. 제가 실제 디야네 제가 야고 장하시는 이 강가티 리과드 키소라. 그다음 돈이도 리과가 찍어 내라서 어디고 당분 찍는 된다 야고. 신나 리과 몽보여나 뭐 쇼셔로야. 다음에 리과가 시도가. 리과 찍이 돈이 또 더러와. 또 더는데 신나 리과가 삼로 또 돈도는 이메가 고아도 또 셔르지니 또 셔야야. 어디 저리서마다 년아니인데 이니까 대관은 또 찍어봤는데 로 게임이 해버리려고 근데 어디 게임이 있어야 되라.
Actually, Geshe, I really appreciate your question. He said, yeah, from the meditative or practice point of view, yes, we should focus on a phenomenon, or one, if we can use the number, because once we understand what does intrinsic reality mean, with regard to that phenomenon, and we refute the intrinsicness of that through all kinds of reasoning, and understand the absence of intrinsic, then it's a matter of shifting our focus to any other things, And that's why even in the Buddhist authentic texts, we know that phenomena are just countless, innumerable, right? We can't know everything, and we don't deal with them, But the whole focus is about the self and the aggregates, isn't it? The relationship between the two. So those are the two, we can take them as one phenomenon, right? So once we understand there is no intrinsic self in the aggregates or outside the aggregates or whatever, all of those things. So once we understand the emptiness of this, then it's a matter of focusing on any other phenomena, right? We really don't talk about the emptiness of the space or the emptiness of the time or the emptiness of trees or something, right? We're only dealing with the self and aggregates, right? And that's a very valid question. And then, of course, there are many different types of reasonable analysis we apply. Of course, there's 5 prominent ones, such as that of dependent arising or singularity and multiplicity or refuting the 4 types of production. And we could use one analysis completely and well, and we can understand emptiness. But that being said, there's advantage to use many more types of reasoning because your analysis is refined and your analysis becomes much more effective and powerful. Okay? And so when you understand emptiness, you really, kind of get at it, more effectively. And that's why when we talk about the difference between Bodhisattva's realization of emptiness and the Charvakas and the Pratyeka Buddha's realization of emptiness is the same, right? But the Bodhisattva realization of emptiness is much more impactful. Why? Because they use multiple reasons and analysis to do that, So that is something to be kept in the mind. Okay. Any other thoughts? Yeah. If not, back to Sure.
So back to my question,
Sure.
actually. So do the enumerators, do they say that the manifest and the non-manifest are intrinsically the same?
Okay.
Because if they do, they're obviously wrong because
Right.
because they should be the same in every regard. So that's a simple refutation of their position. This is a little bit too fanciful, really, with all these 2 reasons.
고랑게 다다기 디 대화제 저버시면 다단다 장전백으로 와게 ngobar mesebe nyuguda ngobar sebe nyugushoro wa dam ngobar sebe mesebe nyuguji keba yoden lamado niga lo ranshi tube chikzigor wa sage ngobar mesebe nyugude darwa ngobar sebe nyugunde ranshi tube chigina ani tanda ngajo labde kan konjo sugugoro wa roge teba pemro wa taya kunyiya chik ranshi tube chik mandu den lagiro marsu so roge
kunyi 그 찌기는 랑말 받아
ranshi tube chigin lagra mar
가르잖아 뭐뭐 세세도 미 통야 내가 그래서 뭐 세세도 통 사봉 주세요
taya ranshi tube tade shaguji로 wa
라
ranshi tube tade shagu
다들 대샤고 가르사 뭐뭐 세 뉴고다 마세 뉴고선 다들 샤게
niga lo ranshi tube lagoro wa
니가 랑제 때 쳐도 랑제 찍바 인스 거다
ane
랑제 찍바 찍고 뭐 찍인서 최다지 그거 자 랑제도 찍인서
ane
먼저 거저 찍 최다지 내동 나리 시야 주세요 된다고 저 찍고 찍고 된다고
ane je chiro wa
어쩌다
alors le chef ni senge que je sais alors alors niga lo rangshin do bayin ta chi so nam jo le chicken ga ngo le chicken so ba ge
허리
ine
이나 찍 말이 찍 통화
this is what they will say. Of course, they claim that both are intrinsically existent, but they are not identical same. They said, there is a difference between manifested that you can see and unmanifested, something invisible. They are not same in that regard, but intrinsically they both exist. And as a matter of fact, they have the same nature because according to enumerators, all phenomena are in the nature of the universal principle, Chizo, right? So they have the same nature. So it's one of those things like, how if we use our Buddhist like tantric language, we said everything is in the nature of bliss and emptiness, right? So this kind of thing, everything is in the nature of the universal principle, Chizo, But they are not one and the same because they're different. One is manifested, you can see it, the one you don't see it, But they are intrinsically existent. Yeah. Any class? Okay, if not, we will stop there and do our dedication prayers. Tunda shuma ge chigi ani anga tene ge jaga chito de ba. Tunda shuma de ro ge ngade. Ani ya de shuli ham peje pa phe ro ge. I'll just inform Geshe that next week I will be here 1 more week, and then I will be out of town for a while. We might have to go back to come abiding. So 1 more. Next week we will continue this. Kange lo de dimye dinde nyinda namda rapsebe jinye dungun jishin soshe nye
So,
Kanda sebe zara mare bendo dunge jise rozo kunla boje Yangla zhuzhe yangden zon zhoda shetro nyumo nyilo leje shanzhu Mare menze dongye nyowo jinye chenze rade nam dene daje sachu tase yunden lunzo jise Juda juda chunyin jende yang lan du omara badana di Omara bazana de senden cheje kera vese ye dalu temo memba kada tenje shunglo toba ye lode bobe na sedo ze lode kyaze udon beba kesam fume chido memba temba jela wando kisho be tanye shogun so on the page 21 Obeisance to my guru and protector Manjushri who holds at his heart a scriptural text symbolic of us seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and free us from the iron chains of our karma, who wields this sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. You have been pure from the beginning, who have completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha. I bow down to you, Manjushri, Omarabhata Di, O compassionate one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind. Enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. 31. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate being, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, O Lobsang Tenzing Wangta, respectfully I pray.
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí ngài điều phục hai chướng ngại, tựa nhật quang lan tỏa khắp mười phương, bậc thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim ngài bát nhã kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báo, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thù thắng, cùng đại bi ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử, tiếng rồng vang ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp báo, gồm trí tuệ ngài chặt đứt vô minh, tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn, trường tử Như Lai tối thắng toàn giác, ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tướng hảo Như Lai, đây đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi. Om Arapasanati, con khẩn cầu dưới gót sen bậc đại trí, bàn pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh, được trí sáng con thâm nhập nghĩa màu, pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận giải. Như diệu hương ngọt ngào từ sen trắng, đàn xanh nơi trí thủ thắng đại dương, hàng thiện căn như ong mật thọ nương, hồng danh ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá, đấng thiện xảo uy dũng bảo tồn pháp bảo vô giá. Nam mô Lobsang Tenzin Quang Đắc, xin cung kính trì niệm.
Chang Ju Sen Jo Ren Bo Je Ma Je Ba Nan Je Yo Je Jie Ba Nyang Ba Me Ba Yang Gong Ne Wa Rai Zhong Dong Nie Da Wa Ren Bo Je Ma Je Ba Nan Je Yo Je Jie Ba Nyang Ba Me Ba Yang Gong Ne Gong Pe Wa Zhong Sa Jie Be Jie Zhu Jie Me Do Zhang Ri Ra Lin Xie Yin De Yan Ba Sang Jie Jin Do Me De Wei Wa Yin Zhou Gui Na Che Ba Zhong Gang Ri Ra Wei Guo Wei Xin Gang De Pen Dan De Wa Ma Lu Zhong Wei Ne Xin Re Se Wang Din Zin Jia Zuo Yi Xia Wei Si De 天有日一当古如热那曼的那个尼安达呀，听표시 가져래. 알래, 그래. 알래 상이